Hi, my name's Luke. Since September 2022, I've been doing a course on contemporary chaplaincy run by Waverley Abbey in Surrey. My related placement has been visiting patients on the wards at St Peter's Hospital in Chertsey, and this I do one afternoon a week. In this 10-minute talk, I'm going to give you an overview of the course content and how the course relates to my placement. Firstly, though, I'd like to say the course was interesting and well run, with excellent resources. It was also great to meet each week on Zoom the other students and hear about their different roles and learn from them also. Each weekly Waverley session comprised a 2-hour online Zoom meeting led by the tutor, Dr. Keith Foster. Other course members were from around the country and were both volunteers or in paid positions. Course members were involved in a wide range of chaplaincy roles, such as in schools, with refugees, drug rehabilitation for the Salvation Army, concerned with the food bank, and in churches. A bit about my placement. St Peter's is a general hospital with about 550 beds and over 4,000 members of staff. There's been a chaplaincy team there for many years, which currently consists of 3 part-time paid chaplains and about 15 volunteers. And these volunteers collectively give about 30 to 40 hours of time a week across St Peter's and its smaller sister hospital in Ashford. The chaplains are well received on the site by the nurses and other staff. My background to starting as a volunteer was being a street pastor for about 15 years and having done a pastoral assistance course a few years ago. Prior to going on the wards alone, I did a short online course run by the lead chaplain, and these courses post-COVID are now run face-to-face, and shadowed 3 chaplains twice each. The course consisted of 6 modules shown here. So Module 1 was an introduction to chaplaincy, Module 2 was about the theology of chaplaincy, whilst Module 3 was about different models of chaplaincy. Module 4 looked at faith and non-faith-based contexts, and the final talk module was about self-care. In the next few slides, I'll say a little bit about all of these modules. In Module 1, we explored what a chaplain is in today's world and the diverse and different roles of chaplains. The more traditional roles of chaplain include in the armed forces, hospitals and prisons. In the past, chaplaincy has predominantly been the domain of Christians. However, chaplains now work in diverse places such as airports, shopping centres, food banks, places of education, workplaces and more. Chaplains can also be of different faiths such as Muslims or Hindu chaplains and even humanist chaplains. For the NHS, there is a requirement that chaplains don't proselytise, and such barriers were discussed in this module and also seen as possible opportunities. In Module 2, we looked at the theology of chaplaincy and explored topics such as biblical meta-narratives, or the big story of the Bible, contextualising the gospel, or making the gospel relevant to different people and people groups, and Missio Dei. Missio Dei sees God as a missionary God who owns and directs the mission. We're encouraged to consider how we might contextualise the gospel for our setting and choose a meta-narrative that we felt would be most appropriate to the areas where we serve. I chose the meta-narrative of love, as ill and vulnerable people probably need to know most importantly of a God who loves them, since outside of the church there can be negative perceptions of Christianity and God. With respect to contextualisation, hospitals are places of huge diversity, and each hospital bed may have a patient where a different type of contextualisation needs to be considered. From the very old to the younger, from people of no faith to Muslims, Hindus, different Christian backgrounds and more. People of all backgrounds are usually open to talk and often open to prayer, but more so for the older ones. In Module 3, we explored different modules of chaplaincy, such as the historical parish model, pastor, missionary, agent of challenge, spiritual care, incarnational sacramental, specialist service care provider, and more. This module also focused to some extent on regulated chaplaincy within the NHS and prison services. The assignment of this module was to write an essay on what chaplaincy model best fitted our placement setting. We could use one of the chaplaincy models outlined in the course material or come up with our own model to suit our setting. For my hospital setting, I came up with the incarnational pastor as a model of chaplaincy. This represents the combination of a caring or pastoral heart and Holy Spirit incarnational in a believer. To my mind, this combines the best of two vital qualities for a hospital chaplain: the caring heart and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit that enables us to carry Christ with us to the patients. In writing this essay, I came across an African paper on chaplaincy which suggested that providing spiritual care in a clinical setting may require a scientific approach for it to be both relevant to the care seeker and the healthcare team. The paper came up with the acronym letters LOVE to stand for L, the chaplain linking to the patient and God; O for the chaplain observing the patient and listening; V for the chaplain verifying particular needs of the patient; and E for empowering the patient in the next stage of their life. So some of these stages, particularly empowerment, may well be taken up by the NHS, as for example they put in a care package as elderly patients leave the hospital or people with a particular injury. However, the chaplain may also be involved in signposting people to particular organisations that may be helpful. In Module 4 on faith and non-faith-based contexts, we explored understanding our culture, apologetics, third places, atonement, and theodicy. Theodicy concerns God and suffering. It was interesting to consider different models of atonement that I hadn't really thought about before, and theodicy, sadly, is very relevant to many patients in hospitals. Third places are considered home-from-home places that are neither work or home, such as cafes, sports clubs, and the like. So it's interesting to discuss these and consider third place situations that might be run by Christians, such as a cafe where people outside of the church can meet Christians in a non-threatening, non-church environment. For this module, our assignment was to write an apologetic relevant to our placement context. The final talk module was Module 5, and this was about self-care. The self-care was broken down into self-reflection, self-accountability, and self-care itself. And in each of these circles are some related aspects personalised to myself. As part of this module, reflective practices such as the examined prayer and journaling we discussed, self-care to include, for example, the use of mindfulness, and accountability to include, for example, linking up with the spiritual director and those in the management team of where we work. It was interesting to hear the range of self-care, accountability and reflection strategies that different members of the course came up with for their different roles. In addition to all of the talks modules, which each had a marked assignment, there was a homework each week, and we were required to keep a journal with 1 or 2 entries a week. Looking back across my journal throughout the year, I can see that I've grown in confidence, but each new visit still needs to be treated with respect and care, and each new visit is still a learning curve. The course has been very relevant in giving me an understanding of the framework of chaplaincy and tools to use as part of hospital visiting. In the last year, I've come to realise that chaplaincy in a hospital setting is more about meeting people where they are with gentleness and respect, rather than what I probably first thought, an urgency to share the gospel. That said, I believe Holy Spirit is always at work in ways we cannot imagine, and I've been moved to see how much an offer of prayer or a listening ear can touch people. In conclusion, I'd like to thank Waverley Abbey and Dr. Keith Foster for running an excellent and interesting course on modern chaplaincy, and the other students on my course who provided so much by their weekly interactions and sharing about their placements. In 2019, I went on a medical outreach trip to Ethiopia with Joyce Meyer, Hand of Hope. Poverty in Ethiopia leads to enormous and dire needs, but over the years, Joyce Meyer, Hand of Hope is making a difference in the lives of the very poor there and in other countries. Needs in the UK can often be harder to see than in places like Ethiopia, but of course they exist, and the UK Church responds in many and different ways. The Waverley Abbey chaplaincy course can provide a formalised training and commissioning of Christians in very diverse chaplaincy roles to take the love of Christ to people outside of the Church in the UK and beyond. Thanks so much for listening.